Hello, people. Sam, we're doing a review of the new Edgar Wright film, Last Night in Soho. I am not extremely familiar with Edgar Wright. I love Baby Driver. I think it's just an amazing movie, and that's about it. I have not seen Shaun of the Dead. I've seen bits and pieces of Scott Pilgrim, and so I know he's a great filmmaker. And so going into this movie, I was relatively excited. Like, I've only seen one of his movies, and so I was just curious to see what he can do with a horror movie because, it's not something that you would think he would do, which is exactly the type of film I think filmmakers like that should be doing, subverting expectations. And when it comes to this movie, I was decently entertained by it. I thought it was a very decently strong movie. For the type, I felt like this was definitely the best movie that he could make of a horror film, if that makes sense. I know a lot of people were really, 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 really looking up to this movie, and knowing, because we all read reviews, we know what people are saying. And going into this movie, I was like, well, I guess people are liking it for the most part, but it's not as good as many other people thought it was going to be. And so going into this, I was like, I know I'm not gonna like this as much as Baby Driver, and that still remains a fact. I think Baby Driver is just Baby Driver is just pure perfection, I think. And this movie, it's the opposite of basically what Baby Driver is. Well, besides, it just has distinct Edgar Wright camera work and different directions and styles, and of course, very music heavy of what they're trying to accomplish. And I love the soundtrack, by the way. The person I was with loved the soundtrack as well. And Anna Taylor-Joy, and I cannot think of the other actress's name. I am sorry. Both gave amazing performances in this movie. Both of them were really solid in this movie. And there's not really too much of the cast beyond that. I thought whoever played, the villain or slash love interest, this movie did a fairly good job for what he was supposed to do. And of course, a lot of people are talking about that third act. I don't think it's a colossal big disappointment like some people are saying it is, but it could have been better. I will admit it's definitely the weaker out of the three acts. But I still relatively enjoyed the third act, so it's not like it did not ruin the movie for me. The third act had a couple twists, which I was on board with, and then what really threw a lot of people off with the third act was, I think it was, it's a spoiler territory. I really can't get into it, but it goes from a very, very original horror film, and you've never seen anything like it before, to kind of falling into some tropes towards the end, and that was a little disappointing because the first two acts were very, very strong, and I was like, how is this third act going to define the movie? And the third act is good. Like, it's not terrible, but I feel like the average person who's familiar with the person that's making this movie, and like I said, I've only seen Baby Driver, so I didn't really know what to think, but I can definitely admit it wasn't the best third act in the world, but it wasn't bad per se. And a lot of people are talking about it, and I don't want to spoil it, but there are a couple twists in there that I did think were quite smart, actually, and I thought they were interesting. And there is ending in this. It's so hard to talk about this movie, particularly the things that don't work. Like, the things that work, they're really easy to talk about, but there is a choice, and I still kind of don't know how I feel about it. There's a lot of things that threw me off. I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this. But there is, let's talk about the scares. This movie never jumped out and scared me, but it definitely had that edgy, creepy tone, and it's a very specific tone. It tries to talk about London in the '60s and kind of pointed out how kind of messed up it was back then. And the movie did a good job at doing that. I thought they did a fantastic job at bringing London or Soho, or whatever, if it's called Soho. I'm assuming it is because it's called Last Night in Soho. But I thought they did a very good job immersing you into the world of that in the '60s. So I thought they did an excellent job with that. Particularly with the dream sequences, they definitely did feel dreamy, and the way that they almost transfer you back and forth really does make you feel like a dream. And it really, cool thing is, each time it perfectly captures the moment that you wake up from a nightmare in a dream. That's something I really enjoyed throughout the whole entire movie. When she would wake up, it's it really, how right before you wake up from a nightmare and you're just kind of and then you wake up, the movie kind of perfectly captures that, and that's what I really liked, and that's what I hoped the movie would do from the second I saw the trailer. So I'm happy that it did that, and yeah, there's a lot of things about this movie I cannot talk about, but I will say, overall, I thought this was a really good horror movie. Well, not necessarily thriller movie, and I just wish it wrapped up better overall. I really wish it wrapped up in a tighter way, like from what I've seen Baby Driver do. And it was a little disappointment at moments to see this kind of fall into some horror tropes at the end, particularly because the first two acts were excellent. And if the third act was consistent or even better than the first two acts, and it was kind of really original and had a little bit and wrapped up and gave me better answers than what I like, than what we got, this movie would be like up there, like as like maybe some of the top 10 of the year. But the third act, like it's not bad, but it definitely is the weaker, and it kind of, because the first two acts are so strong, they're so strong, and the third act just kind of becomes a horror movie that you've seen 2 or 3 times. So I'm sad to report that, but the third act still manages to have a distinct direction and style to it, but the choices on paper felt very, you've seen that before. And that's the best way I can describe it without not getting into spoilers. And yeah, comment down below what you guys thought of Last Night in Soho. I thought it was really good, and I think I'm on the positive side. I'm going to give this movie an 8 out of 10. Definitely worth seeing, because it is, because overall, like I said, it fell into a couple tropes towards the end. The first two things were so original and very, very engaging, and held up by fantastic performances, and the atmosphere of the dreams and all that, and the mystery of it all was really, really engaging. And I don't want to see, I went into this review kind of saying, like, I don't want to be that person that complains about this third act, because I heard a lot of people complaining about it. But as I was watching it, I was like, it can't be that bad. And then I was like, well, this isn't terrible third act. It's more of a disappointing third act than a bad third act. It's the third act, it's like, well, we've seen other movies do that. The first two acts were doing all these cool things, and now you're doing this now? But like I said, it's told in a distinct, still Edgar Wright, well, I'm assuming I've only seen two of his movies now, so I really can't say what Edgar Wright's style is. But the movie still had style towards the end, but, you know, it had its problems. But yeah, like I said, movies 8 out of 10. Comment down below what you guys think. I feel bad for... It's so, you can definitely tell when I'm talking about a movie and when I'm having a hard time not really talking about it, because it's like the problems are all spoilers. So yeah, anyways, comment down below if you guys want to talk about spoilers in the comments. Drop it down below. It's just make sure that you let people know that there is spoilers, and make sure there's a couple spaces between it so people don't accidentally read it, so we can have a discussion there if you guys want. So yeah, anyways, like, share, subscribe, and stuff like that, and adios.